Welcome back to the second episode of the Team Sammy Podcast, and today we are going to be breaking down some of the major talking points of the first round. Obviously not going to hit all the picks. That would take a very long time. But the major talking points definitely deserve to be talked about, sorry. But jumping right in, first name that will be mentioned is Michael Penix Jr. to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because if you've listened to anything this morning, it's really been primarily focused on the pick of Penix Jr. to the Falcons, main talking point everywhere. And just the main question is, why would the Falcons do that? You paid Kirk Cousins an absurd amount of money. The fact that the signing is being looked into as tampering means that the Falcons knew that they were going to be going in this Cousins direction for a while before then putting all the chips in. Like, they were so excited that they jumped the gun to make sure that they got Cousins. He was literally the number one priority for any team other than maybe Saquon and the Eagles. But regardless of that, the Falcons then decided to go spend their top 10 pick without telling Cousins what was happening on a quarterback who's already 24 years old. Even if you're going to take a quarterback, still on the board was the 21-year-old J.J. McCarthy, who was the same age that Jordan Love was when he was drafted by the Packers. Jordan Love is still viewed as a youthful quarterback, probably because he's 25, I think, now, or at least will be when the season starts. Point is, if Cousins is a good enough starting quarterback, you're looking at Penix coming in on the last year of his rookie deal as like a 28-year-old. If they pick up like the fifth-year option, that, or you're choosing to start Penix right away and you're leaving your 4-year, $180 million quarterback on the bench doing nothing. Rome Odunze was on the board. I know wide receiver is not exactly the highest of needs for the Falcons, but any team can still use another good receiver. Literally anybody. And you could address any player on defense. Every defensive player was still on the board. The Falcons did not really have too much of an elite pass rush, unless if maybe they were afraid of like a Vic Beasley 2.0 thing, and they avoided Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu for that reason. There's really no excuse for what the Falcons chose to do by taking Michael Penix Jr., being obviously my worst pick of the first round, or what I think is the worst pick of the first round, because also this is not there's not a guarantee, or at least a view of a guarantee for Penix. Nobody's actually a guarantee, but like let's say Caleb Williams, for whatever reason, was drafted to a team that had a secure veteran quarterback already. You're saying, okay, this guy's going to sit and then he's going to come out and be the elite player that he's expected to be. Penix by no means is expected to be some absolute elite quarterback prospect. He's still a gamble in and of itself. So Falcons leave me a little bit confused with that pick. Up next, I want to talk about the new Denver Broncos quarterback, Bo Nix, who went 12th overall. Again, if you watched or listened to the mock draft from yesterday, I had neither Penix or Nix making it into the first round. So obviously I was very surprised at pick 8, and then again surprised at pick 12 when Nix went. Excuse me. But now I'm just looking at a situation where I think the Broncos jumped the gun on getting their quarterback, meaning I think they should have waited to address that next offseason, whether that be trade, free agency, or the draft, because the Broncos really don't have enough around Nix to put him in a favorable situation right away. What I kind of view this as really like my comp for a situation, not the players, but the situation the players were put in, would be Sam Darnold, where you're thrust into a team that just does not have enough around you, and you're in a division with a perennial superstar team, top end of the NFL, the Patriots for Darnold, now the Chiefs for Nix, a team that you're going to have to be facing twice a year, and like Nix has no chance of winning the division, and the AFC already is probably a little bit more competitive than the NFC. Just traded away Jerry Jeudy in the offseason. Now, I'm not saying Jerry Jeudy was good either. Jerry Jeudy kind of sucked, or at least sucked due to expectations that were put on him. Like, that receiving room is Courtland Sutton. People think that Courtland Sutton had a good season because of touchdowns last year. Rookie quarterbacks don't throw touchdowns. That's just not a thing that happens. Justin Herbert did. Andrew Luck did. Russell Wilson, I think, threw over 30 touchdowns last year, or at least close to it. Bo Nix is not throwing close to 30 touchdowns. And the reason that Courtland Sutton was viewed as a good receiver last year is because he had 10 touchdowns. He only had 700-something yards other than that. Marvin Mims, second-round pick from last year, struggled to get himself onto the field. You got Tim Patrick, who hasn't played in years. And then you got Javonte Williams, who's not been the same since his injury from a couple seasons ago as the running back. The only hope would be if Jaleel McLaughlin is just an absolutely elite player somehow, because he's young. That's really the only chance that I think the offense has of really turning it up. There might be a slight chance of a Greg Dulcich breakout. He definitely showed signs of being a decent tight end a couple seasons ago. I just think that the Broncos jumped the gun on taking a quarterback. I don't think that they're situated to be able to grow and develop a quarterback. Not saying that like the Zach Wilson trade was going to fix everything, but the thing is there's no fixing this team for this year. So I think the Broncos have kind of put themselves in an even worse situation by not addressing any other position on the field with their premium high pick that they had at pick 12. And I think this is also damaging to what Bo Nix could have done in his career if he went to somewhere like Seattle, for example, where you're going to sit behind Geno Smith for at least one season. Then you're walking into a situation where you've got DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Kenneth Walker. That's a big difference from what the Broncos have. So that's my second main takeaway from the draft. Next up that I'm going to talk about is the LSU receiver Brian Thomas Jr., who was drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars at, 23rd overall. Jaguars moved back initially, and then I thought that they might have gone cornerback. On the board still was Terry and Arnold, and it was a pick after Quinyon Mitchell went to Philadelphia. But this is a very interesting selection for Jacksonville. Just thinking about this is the time for Trevor Lawrence. You've got Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk's not a number one, but he's still a good player. Gabe Davis, phenomenal deep threat. Again, not saying Gabe Davis is any sort of alpha, sigma, if you will, NFL receiver. And now that you add Brian Thomas Jr., who has the chance to be, I don't really think so. It's always hard to project when a guy is just going to be an alpha, but the point is you have three quality receivers. Add in Evan Engram, add in Travis Etienne, he was pretty inefficient, but he was very good as a pass catcher. It's now or never for Trevor Lawrence to really show something, in my opinion, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, as he had some great signs year 2, took a lot of steps back this past year, year 3, including the fall off from the 7-2 start from Jacksonville. They fell all the way to 9-8, missed the playoffs. Or 7-2, I think it was 8-3 start, whatever. But the Jaguars have put Trevor Lawrence into a situation where he has the weapons and tools around him. If Trevor Lawrence really is the generational quarterback that he was touted to be in the draft process 3 years ago, if he does not show that this year, then I think we can really pull the plug on Trevor Lawrence ever being a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. He will probably still be, I imagine he'll still get extended by Jacksonville if he puts up similar numbers to last year, 2 years ago, but this is the last time that we can really go into a season kind of still being able to project a big breakout for Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if it's going to happen. You're already in a division where the Texans really went all in and have they've assembled probably a top 5 to 7 roster in the NFL with all of those offseason moves that they made. Tennessee is a really hard team to predict, and Indianapolis, they had a winning record with a backup quarterback last year. So that's also a situation where you would expect them to improve. So the Jaguars are in a pretty tough situation. I do not imagine them winning the AFC South, but this is the time for Trevor Lawrence to prove himself to the NFL that he is capable of being that guy after the selection of Brian Thomas Jr. And lastly, you knew I was going to talk about it, you viewer out there. The Lions traded up to 24 and selected the Alabama cornerback Terrion Arnold, who, according to Brad Holmes, the Detroit Lions GM, was far and away the number one cornerback that they had. And they weren't sure that they were going to get him. He had to fall to a certain range for them to be able, or to be willing to move up and take Arnold. And he did make it to, well, obviously, because they did trade up for him, they made it to the range where Holmes was willing to make the move up. And honestly, the best part about it was the Lions jumped the Green Bay Packers, who were widely expected to take a cornerback. Cooper DeJean specifically was mocked there very often, including myself. The Lions really did need secondary help. Obviously, CJ departed in free agency, headed back to Philly. He didn't do much anyway in Detroit. Cam Sutton was arrested and then released. They brought over Amik Robertson in the offseason from Las Vegas, and then the trade for Carlton Davis. But again, they need a guy who has at least a chance of being a true number one cornerback. You're going to face Justin Jefferson twice a year, and now you're facing the scary Bears receiving core twice a year of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, now their rookie Rome Odunze. The Lions just needed pieces in the secondary. I did a little bit of research, and I looked at every cornerback over the past 10 years that was taken between picks 24 and 35, and what their year one production was, and there really was nothing substantial. So that's the one thing that worries me, is just the fact that even if Terrion Arnold really turns into just a dominant cornerback, which I really think that he will, I really think Terrion Arnold will be a good player in the NFL for a long time. But historically, just looking at the range of where these corners are taken, where Arnold was taken, there's not really an example of him just coming out and being a dog right away, a rookie Sauce Gardner example. The one close-ish estimate that there is out there was Tre'Davious White in, I think, 2017, obviously coming over in the Patrick Mahomes trade up with the Chiefs. And, I mean, there are some names in there of guys that, like, from the 24 to 35 range where it's like, I forgot that this guy ever was in the NFL. The hit rate for cornerbacks really is not great from this range. Arnold fell. Brad Holmes has proved himself very much so in the draft, not necessarily in what he does in free agency, but in the draft, Holmes has proven himself of being very worthy of being able to stand by the guys that he takes, because his thorough scouting is elite. And it just worries me a little bit that the Lions now will not try to shore up that secondary anymore before the season starts, now that I think that they have their guy. So a little bit concerned there. But that is still, I think, just an absolutely elite job by the Lions front office to go up and get a guy that will turn into somebody who's just going to be absolutely phenomenal for a long time to come for Detroit. And from the looks of it, he seemed really excited to be in Detroit. So, love that, obviously. And that is all I have for you guys, or for you, Guy, today on the Team Sammy podcast. Again, I have no idea how often I'm going to do these. I just really enjoy doing it. There might be like a stretch of 3 weeks where nothing is out. I might do 2 in a day at some point. Don't really know the schedule on that, but I appreciate you guys. And I might have something that talks about the rest of the draft coming out at some point next week. See ya.